We're back. Exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have a casual and informal conversation about Star Trek. And today we are talking about the episode Project Daedalus. What is this? The 9th episode in Star Trek Discovery season 2? Season 3, we're time travelers.
Season 2, episode 9. 9 of 14.
2, episode 9. Woohoo! We're here, 9th episode. I'm joined by Fathery and of Text Trek and PJ of Boat Wreck, which I love now that I realize what it is.
Well, you can say thank you for coming back. I don't really care. It's like whatever.
I like Boat Trek.
I like to call it Boa Trek because it's like Star Trek. And everyone has like a boa around their neck. On their
Oh, it'd be amazing.
Yeah, that works.
If you gents want to give the episode summary, or shall I?
I'll do it unless PJ wants to.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay, go for it.
So I was gonna go ahead and jump right into it.
Yes.
So the episode opens where we left off last week with the USS Discovery as a fugitive ship on the run from Starfleet. They're disobeying orders and going rogue, but Admiral Cornwell shows up. She joins up with them on the shuttle, and she goes all full psychiatrist admiral and is trying to determine if Spock is truly a murderer and runs a lie detector on him. Turns out that he is telling the truth, that he didn't kill anyone on Starbase 5, but there is footage that Cornwell brings with her that clearly shows him beating people to death. So we have a mystery there.
It was awesome footage, by the way.
She informs Captain Pike and the rest of the crew that control the computer AI that assesses threats and provides like recommendations for Section 31 and Starfleet. It has locked her out of the system. Normally, every admiral can feed information into it and get output back from it. She has been locked out. So they're going to Section 31 headquarters, which is a abandoned prison space station surrounded by a minefield. And you have to go through like this secret maneuvering to like get through the mines and reach the station. And when they get there, they're confronted by the image of the Vulcan admiral. Anyone remember her name? Palak, I think.
Palak.
Wasn't it Patek?
Palak.
Oh, Patek. No, I don't know.
Patek. Okay.
I can see.
We'll go on.
We'll gonna double check on that. But she comes up on the view screen and tells them that Admiral Cornwell is now an enemy of Starfleet also. And we were told that she is a logic extremist and that she seems to be going rogue and putting Section 31 to work on her own radical agenda. An away team of Burnham, Arium, and
Non.
And security chief commander Non beam over to the Section 31 station. Saru is able to determine that the admiral was actually a fake hologram, and the away team discovers
Admiral Patar.
Admiral Patar. The away team, or I guess I should say the landing party, because that's like TOS era. They say landing party. The away team, landing party, whatever you want to call it. They find the bodies of the dead admirals that command Section 31. So control has gone rogue. It's a computer AI doing its own thing, and Arium is its little sleeper agent that's been on the Discovery, sending messages to it. Arium is trying to install all the information from the Charon sphere from several episodes ago. Everything that sphere had collected on artificial intelligence, Arium's trying to give that vast array of information to control. Non and Burnham get in a fight with her, but Arium has a cyborg strength. Burnham is able to like shoot her with stun on a phaser and like back her into an airlock. And the only solution at this point seems to be to eject Arium out into space. Arium's actually like telling Burnham, when you go ahead and do it, you have to kill me It's the only way to stop this. Burnham can't bring herself to do it. Arium tells her it's so important you stay alive. It's all about you. You have to go find out about Project Daedalus. And Burnham is asking, oh, what's Project Daedalus? But right when she asks that, Non opens the airlock and shoots Arium out into space to kill her. And now we're left with the mystery of what is Project Daedalus? What is the motives of Control? And how does this tie into the Red Angel and Spock's vision of the galactic apocalypse?
Very nicely done. It's 6 minutes. That's like a record. I'm very impressed. That was very cool.
That's typically how long it takes me and Dave to recap it on Text Trek. We aim for like a 6 minute.
I like that. I'm gonna take your cue and start trying to improve my. Sometimes they can go on for like 15 minutes, but that was excellent. What I guess we could jump right into our discussion of it. What do you guys like? Is there any big question other than obviously like what is Control up to, like et cetera, or like what do you think's going on? And then I guess we'll figure out what we all think of this episode through that discussion. But go ahead. The floor is open, gentlemen.
BJ, you want to go first?
Control, has it been taken over by the future alien technology already? And that's why it's killed the admirals and such? It's already gone.
Or is it? Or do you think it's like? Do you think it's like Skynet though, or maybe it's not?
It went all Skynet there. And now it's trying to obtain the information from Arium, or did Arium cause Section 31? Oh, actually, yes, she did, because the last episode they say all these petabytes of information were transferred, like huge chunks of data, to this location where Section 31 was. That was Arium's doing. So Pike and Tyler's journey into the temporal anomaly caused this whole thing, right?
I think this episode established it. I think that like you just kind of made it clearer. I think what this episode establishes is whatever the probe that was sent from the future was doing, that was definitely it was Control of the future. So maybe the Red Angel's coming back in time to stop a bunch of things.
It seems like this
from having
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
And the thing is that like we know how this ends, but what's kind of cool explains why technology is the way it is in the future, because like in TOS and in TNG, computers are not sentient. They're not like, they don't really think for themselves. Like they're very much just like, you know, input command, execute command, right? Like it's very rare that you get any other thing like this, but we don't really know why that decision was ever made, because especially if you look at like how humanity now is looking into artificial intelligence, et cetera, one wonders, well, artificial intelligence, well, maybe artificial intelligence went batshit crazy and tried to kill every sentient being in the galaxy, and so after that we're like, okay, no more artificial intelligence, you know, with the exception of like Data, of course. Who comes
what about the
100 years
the
later.
Omega computer? And
yeah, well, yeah, there's like, but they're always destroyed, right?
Series.
But yeah, whenever they encounter, whenever they encounter these like crazy sentient computers, they're like, okay, we have no choice. We have to destroy. Will destroy us, right?
That could be a really topical and relevant story to tell now, even though traditionally I kind of roll my eyes when science fiction does the real technophobic stories. They're like, oh no, technology is evil and scary. I would rather see stories of us using technology successfully to do bigger and greater things and get that out of my science fiction.
In this case, it's not their technology evolving into something evil. It's an outside influence from the far future purposely manipulating technology from the past to gain an advantage for their own future. So whatever entity's doing this is doing it all to it's kind of like what the Borg did in First Contact, where they went back to Earth and simulated Earth before the Federation could ever be started, type thing. So but by the time the 24th century rolled around, everything was Borg. Just much like in this scenario, these artificial life forms, it seems Control is kind of like the villain now, I guess. Doesn't it seem like very Borgy to you? Don't you think there's a Borg connection here? I keep thinking I'm crazy for thinking that, but like the more this season goes on, the more it's alluding to something, not necessarily full on Borg, but maybe hints of a Borg connection. Some people speculated that Arium could be floating out there and become the Borg Queen, but they actually take her body back in, and then they shoot it out again into space. So I don't know.
I would love if Discovery
in the next episode. I mean, sorry. Go ahead.
I kind of think they should just kind of avoid the Borg and leave that to the Picard show if we're ever going to see that played with.
Right. But I think that it could be something other than the Borg, because this is 500. Wherever that probe came from, it was like 500 years in the future, right? So it more aligns with. Now I'm rewatching Enterprise, and so you guys might be able to help me out with this. But Daniels at one point goes back to the future, and it's totally destroyed, right? Like something
back to the future, like Marty
right. Does it and like
Shockwave parts 1 and 2.
Right. And so, like, is this that's the future we're talking about, right? Isn't it around the same time?
No, that's a little further.
Okay.
Like the 31st century.
Yeah,
gotcha.
From the 28th. But the 28th century is where Future Guy was from. The shadow hologram who controls the Suliban of the 22nd century. I don't think they're going to touch on either of those two things. Like this is where I see it playing out. If I can just like spit out my theory and then see what y'all think about it. But I think that the future where we saw all those planets get destroyed, I think that was Control evolving to kill all life in the galaxy for some reason. We don't know the full motivation. And I think that what we saw in the Short Trek episode Calypso, which was another 500 years on top of where the probe came from, because that was 1,000 years after the main show. I think that's set in a universe that's like post the destruction of these worlds, and this is like the few remaining remnants of the organic life forms are still around, and they're still at war. Maybe with like the Vidrash might be like a future version of Control. And that's why like Kraft, he seemed to have like he's human, but like he has like this super weird society, and he comes from like this weird colony planet and not Earth, because maybe like Earth has been like wiped off the map. And I think that future might end up never happening, because whatever they do in the contemporary part of Discovery will prevent that future from coming to be. And I also think that when Arium installed her personality memories and stuff onto the Discovery before she went on her suicide mission, I think that is what evolves the computer into Zora in Calypso. And I think that somehow that's going to be tied to the Red Angel. I think that might be something that like maybe the ship is sending the Red Angel, whoever it is, back in time, or a future version of Arium becomes the Red Angel, or something like that. And I think that what we saw like on the probe that came back from 500 years in the future, that was Control trying to basically like kickstart itself early by getting that orb or that sphere data installed to it sooner. It doesn't succeed in that. Arium's unable to complete her mission for Control, so the ship is still flying around with all that information on its computer. So Control might come after Discovery again at some point. But this is it's very much like a Skynet Terminator future computer sending operatives back in time type of story. But I would love for it to do something to make it like a little less repetitive of Terminator. I really want to know Control's motivations. I hope it's not just that, I'm going to kill all organic life because computers are superior. I don't want it to be something like that. I want it to be something new and unique. If any of this is right, I could be way off, but this is just what I'm thinking. What do y'all think?
Well, it's interesting to think that like whatever's going on takes place so far in the future, like whatever this event is takes place so far in the future that it kind of explains why we don't get any more mention of it after Discovery, right? Like why there's no problem in TOS and in TNG era regarding this. But so whatever's getting started here, like at this point maybe continued in a future Star Trek series. But I do think that, like, I think your theory is pretty cool. The only problems I have with Zora is that, like, so what is Zora? Because I mean, Ariam leaves her memories behind, and if that evolves into if that evolves into Zora, then why doesn't Zora have a sense of self that identifies as Ariam? Like, why would she change her name to Zora? Why would she look different? So those are the questions I have behind that. The other thing is what I wonder is, like, you're where the future set in that short track is like a dystopian kind of future. So, like, as that yeah, like something catastrophic happens and we end up, you know, losing the war, as it were, and like that. But at the time, it's like all that's like super interesting, but the show just, how is Discovery gonna like rectify all this, but then like not let, you know, not be in effect? And I think it's kind of sad to like just collapse the timeline like that, though it would be to a favorable outcome. I kind of want to see the story. I'm kind of actually curious about a story set in that future that's post-apocalyptic.
I don't want
and
all
stuff
those
like that.
planets to blow up in Star Trek.
No, I know. I don't either, but if that's, you know,
Star Trek is
I don't know.
the heroes who stop that from happening. They find a way. They work together. They use logic and compassion and science, and decency to get the right outcome.
No, it's true, but you could still happen in a post-apocalyptic universe. But regardless, something interesting that Ariam did say, like, she said, like, Control wants her to kill Burnham because it all started with her, which kind of solidifies like something that I was thinking, which is that, like, Burnham is the reason everything's weird or like different, because in another timeline she wasn't supposed to exist, and so now that she does exist, present timeline, it's the ramifications are things like the Klingon. We were all wondering, like, when did that happen, right? Like, there's all these, like, no, we weren't wondering that. No, what do you?
I would be outraged if they said that, like, Discovery is like a divergent timeline and all the stuff.
But like, you're looking at it in a way, it's a divergence, but it's not. So, like, temporally speaking, it's just the timeline. Like, there's every other possibility just collapses, right? So, like, it doesn't mean that TOS won't, doesn't mean that, like, TNG won't happen. It just means that, like, this is something you didn't know about because it didn't happen until now, if that makes any sense. Like, it can still be the same timeline. It doesn't have to be divergent. It's just that from the perspective. Okay, so like, time travel, you're the only one aware that anything's changed. To the people in, like, the universe that you've changed, they have no realization or perspective of it. It's not a divergent timeline. It's just the active timeline. I don't know. I look at it that way.
Like, we know that the events of The Cage take place in the same timeline where Michael Burnham didn't. I think you're talking about when she was a kid, when that monster on Vulcan in the Forge almost ate her. When
Right.
the Red Angel told Spock where she was and prevented that from happening. So that timeline where the Red Angel does intervene, it's the same timeline where The Cage takes place. So we can assume it's the same timeline where all the original series will take place, and then all of the original series movies and Next Generation. And
that's this timeline, that timeline. Like, hello?
I hear you.
Oh, I think I froze then. Sorry.
No,
I guess it can get confusing because we kind of have a perspective outside of, you know what I mean? Like, as the audience, we have like a bigger perspective. Like, to us, it's like, oh yeah, this, that, and the other. There's all these mysteries. I like it all because it makes me think about it, but it is confusing. I just don't think that, like, it prevents it. I just don't think it necessarily has to be a divergent timeline. I think they can still play it in a way where this is the way that it's supposed to be. Like, this is the timeline, not a divergent timeline.
They should play it in a way to where if the Red Angel didn't save Michael Burnham as a kid and keep her alive, then the prime timeline would never have happened.
Right. I think that and I think that's the end game, because, like, right, this is this is a person from the future, so like they're making decisions to do something good. Hopefully, we hope the is trying to stop.
Oh, what if that was a
Like-
twist? What if the Red Angel was actually an evildoer and it just
Oh, that
been
would be
manipulated?
crazy. I know that would be F as all heck, but like, it's like, so it's hard to think about, but like here, like, so Control has a different. So here's Red Angel's trying to save Michael Burnham, kill Michael Burnham, right? So it's like there's an interesting thing, and I wonder what is going to happen. I thought something interesting from the review for the next episode was like this chamber that they up, and she's sitting in this chair, and it's like I wonder if things are going to come to a head. And I think the next episode is called Red Angel, right?
Yes, sir. So that might actually be when we learn the identity of the Red Angel.
It's gonna be very interesting.
They've given us a lot. They've given us a lot of answers in the past 3 episodes, so yeah. I think they should run a winning streak.
They don't really draw mysteries out too long. Like,
well, yeah, every episode provides answers now, like every single one since 7. So
on Text Trek, we've been comparing Discovery to Lost a little bit, and how on Lost they had all these questions, but so rarely gave satisfying answers or any answers consistently. But
yeah, I hear from a lot of Lost fans that it was. I hear from a lot of Lost fans that it's either like it's wonderful or they hate because they hate it. Yeah,
I didn't really give it a fair shot when I watched it. I had like a roommate who like wanted to watch the whole series after it had finished, and I was not interested. And so whenever he would put it on the TV, I had a recliner in the living room, and I would turn my recliner around to face away from the TV because I was like, no, I'm not going to watch that. And then I ended up going to like Wikipedia, and I just read all the Wikipedia articles of like every storyline in that show and just spoiled the whole thing for myself. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so glad I didn't waste time with that.
Walski of his thoughts on his latest video. I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch it. But one thing he mentioned, I kind of want to hear what you guys think of it, is that like the whole thing with the mines, like why.
Hello?
Everybody just cut out, so.
Okay. Well, Section 31 did not want Starfleet Boy to give away the... Oh, he's back now.
Oh, okay. Wait, so yeah, I know someone doesn't want... So, Control is blocking my transmissions.
Yeah.
I'm actually a hologram. No, but did you hear any of what I said?
Oh, the last thing I heard was the mines in Kit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Kowalski brings up that the mines, like, so why would the mines attack the Discovery if Control wants Arium to get aboard and give the information? So that was like a question, and I wondered what your take on that was.
Because it would be suspicious if the mines didn't do what they were supposed to do.
Would it have been because Cornwell thought she knew like the secret path to fly?
Right.
She was actually super surprised when the mine started attacking. She was like, "No, that's impossible."
Right. She did say that. That's right.
But when the mines don't seem to be like that much of a threat, and then they do the whole random evasive maneuvers thing.
It was
they get through it fine. It's not, I think Control is manipulating them into thinking that there's a challenge here, because wouldn't it be suspicious if the mines just didn't do anything?
Oh, I got it. I got it figured out. It makes sense now. Because the mines do damage the ship a little bit when they get through Pike, or I think it's someone else on the bridge, but they do say that warp and impulse are down, so they can't really flee. Right. They can't go anywhere. So
it was like a tactic there. I get it. Okay.
Just to stall it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like maybe there weren't phasers, and it used the technology available to it to like its end. So like, I buy that. I like that. So hopefully Kowalski's listening to this and
this episode,
he thinks about that.
This episode takes place 2 weeks after the last episode, correct?
I don't.
How do you know that?
It could be
because the admirals have been dead for 2 weeks.
Yeah, but maybe they were already dead.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking that they were dead in the last episode, and the hologram we saw was fake. But PJ has the theory that the control didn't go bad until Arium started transmitting stuff to it. So if he's right about that, then those admirals would have been alive.
Well, in the last episode, Saru makes a point to tell Pike that all of this unknown data was transmitted to this location. And in this episode, they confirm that that location is where
they
control
were.
is.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
that makes sense.
It's not hard to believe that 2 weeks would have passed because, I mean, they've got to do a lot of work. And, I mean, time would fly by on that ship. So
I need to know the timetable of Discovery Season 2.
Most episodes have been pretty close together within a couple of days.
Yes.
And there's one or two where it seems like maybe a week or two has passed.
Like I think
maybe only a couple of months. So.
Yeah, I think it might only be like 6 weeks for the season so far.
Yeah,
maybe even a little less than that. I know at one point they do mention 2 weeks ago. I think one of the episodes with May, the little spore person with Tilly, one of those episodes they established that the season started like 2 weeks ago when they rescued the Hiawatha.
Right.
In
where
episode
is question Kowalski had is where's Jet Reno?
Like... She disappeared.
I don't know if we'll see her again. You might be the only two episodes with her.
We've never seen the chief engineer,
really
so
they need to just make her the chief
engineer.
But
I really like Jet Reno.
Just promote her to the chief. And then the people that keep complaining about why don't we see the engineer, and then they'd be like, well, here's your answer.
Yeah, well,
whenever they completely decommission the spore drive, you just like convert that into your engineering.
Did you guys think of Spock? We've actually seen kind of to normal, so to speak, although he still has some anger issues that he's working out, I guess.
I like Spock. I like Ethan Peck as Spock.
That was a very raw, like that was very cool, like just like I really like it.
I do. To me, this is the closest we've gotten to TOS Spock, even though they're doing this weird thing where he's leaning into his emotions. I think that really the writing more than anything else, it feels like the way that they wrote Spock's dialogue then. But Ethan Peck has really kind of embodied a youthful version of that character. He has a very similar mannerisms. He has a very similar presence. I like that they actually took the time to get like a tall, skinny guy with a deep voice. It's so weird watching him though, because I'm just so familiar with Nimoy's performance that it's still kind of, it's like, oh, this is like not quite what I'm used to, but there's so much there. I think there's genuine effort put into making this guy feel like the Spock that we know from the original series. And I just love his his rivalry with Burnham and how it kind of keeps Spock from being like the perfect character that like a lot of fans worship, the Star Trek icon, the most iconic Star Trek character ever. And he's humanized to see him like he has like this weird unhealthy relationship with his foster sister, and he's not
right.
like
I take delight because I have a sister and the relationship is spot on. I feel like it's a very common thing when you have like a sibling.
Are y'all close to the same age?
Yeah, we're really close to the same age, so it's not not as accurate as this, but like just when we were young, we're really good friends now, but there was a time period in our teenage years where this was like the exact same, like we knew how to push each other's buttons. We're cordial, but also like really, vindictive to each other. And so it's like, I just like, I feel like it's a very relatable type of relationship. I do think it's interesting to see how Burnham and Spock go back and forth, and like she even like crosses like and like a little bit like it's almost like she's intentionally trying to like get a rise out of him when she's like, well, Eric taught me how to do this like move, and just sitting there like, and he's like, well, I don't really care what Sarek's closed-mindedness or whatever. And I also think it's interesting that he says to her in that one part where he's like, you can't know the end of Sarek, but he doesn't know that Sarek is constantly Katra IMing her. He's constantly DMing her on the Katra.
She has part of Sarek's Katra in her brain, and I wish
she does.
Bring that up more because I think that would, a lot of these people that complain about Michael Burnham, that think that like she's too smart or she's too capable. Like I wish they would remember. Well, she has part of a Vulcan Katra in her brain.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I do also like that the show, and again, this is another point that I think Ski brought up in his video, but I do agree with this, and I like that the show kind of like brought up this whole thing of like giving a motivation behind Burnham. Spock kind of calls her out, and giving a motivation around some of the complaints that people have, like as Burnham's most annoying qualities, where like her flaws, if you will, and brings it up. He's like, you keep doing anything you can and shouldering immense burdens just to avoid the real is your insane, the grief that you haven't dealt with since you were a kid. Like, it's interesting to think that like this is the result of not dealing with the grief or loss of like your family, and like that you just keep like putting it onto the next kind of thing. Like, so I like that a lot. I love that like extra kind of insight into Michael Burnham, and it actually makes her even more like, I feel actually a lot more interest and like sad for her, because now I'm like, oh yeah, like that makes sense. Like if you're doing these things, you're gonna make bad calls, you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna like shoulder burdens that you shouldn't be doing, you know? Like, so it makes sense. And like I like how it calls her out again and says like, you thought like the logic extremists were after you, but you never even considered that they were after me, the half human, like abomination. As a good like,
yeah, Michael Burnham as a character has never been more relatable as she is now. Especially now that when there's this interesting revelation that Spock gives that might actually be true, that she actually thinks she was the one that the Vulcan extremists were targeting, when in fact it probably wasn't. Maybe the attack on the Vulcan Learning Center was to kill Spock.
Yeah. Right. I thought it was cool that they presented that, because that would kind of make sense if they were going after the half-breed freak and not the human.
I like how she freaks out and she's like, shut up. She tells him like really loudly to shut up. And he talks about that scene where the Michael Burnham's in the closet hearing what's happening outside. That's something I've wanted them to kind of show, not in any kind of graphic detail, but the way they did it was absolutely perfect. And it provides so much context for the backstory of the characters, the relationship between Spock and Burnham. You really understand the reasons why they have this contemptuous relationship, and it makes perfect sense. And this whole thing where Spock is leaning into his emotions, he's almost getting off on being angry for the first time in his life. He sees some kind of pleasure in it. That's a really interesting place to go with Spock. That doesn't violate in any way what he is to become later down the line. This is a learning curve. And also the interactions between him and Stamets, like fantastic.
I love that so much.
Really great.
And to me, that felt like a crossover between two different Star Trek shows, and we had like a TOS character and a Discovery character talking to each other. It's kind of like when Dr. Bashir went over to the Enterprise and was hanging out with Data.
Yeah.
When Riker has to call Quark to like get some details on Lorsa and B'Etor. It felt like, oh, cool, like these two characters from these two separate little Star Trek worlds are colliding together.
Excellent. I thought I think this is a good time to just highlight that the acting is getting great, like even better. Like, I think
the writing is getting better too.
Yes. Yeah, and the writing too. I really love the scene. There's so many scenes in this episode but like I really love the scene where like Pike kind of gets in front of the view screen and he's like, "What do you mean there's mom?" And he gets defeated and like stuff like that, and Cornwall is just like, dude, the reason we sat you out of the war was because we wanted to preserve the beds of Starfleet.
Right here. He's right here.
Yeah.
When when he said, "Oh, you
Yeah.
kept me out of the war because I wouldn't let you do things like set up minefields and things that compromise our values." And she's like, "No, we kept you out of the war because of your goodness, and we wanted, if anyone survived, it should have been you and your crew and your ship."
Now get off my
So
ass.
good. Yeah, and he loved it. I loved all that stuff.
I don't want.
I guess so.
I love him too much. He's the best captain.
Isn't it wonderful how this captain that was like not really fleshed out in any way, like that is like one of the delights about Discovery, like and like I love that like the show just decided to go in this direction. I really am enjoying all this new information about Captain Pike, and you're right, this like places him up in the pantheon of captains, which is
like
pretty cool.
I can understand now why there is a Captain Pike Medal of Valor. That's like a very prestigious award that they give Starfleet officers in the future.
Well, even in the menagerie, like they didn't have the heart to decommission him. He was still a active, ranking captain, even though he was like injured, beyond the ability to do it. Like he can't at a fleet anymore, anything like that. So that was really great.
I think the Commodore Mendez explained that to Kirk at Starbase 11.
Yeah.
Did y'all want to talk about Arium and the episode's attempt to flesh her out, and kind of like it? We kind of got like some lower decks type stuff, talking about like the episode, not the animated show.
There's a complaint about it. There's a common complaint about this episode that I've seen, like from the dissenters, and they probably like the episode. I don't know, but this is a complaint that I don't agree with, where they say they killed off Arium, but they didn't give her enough character development in this or previous episodes. I strongly disagree with that. I think if Arium had never been seen barely at all in any other episode, or even barely spoke, which is kind of the case, they give her enough content. They give her enough character development between that scene with her and Tilly in her quarters, seeing her memories. We gain a fundamental understanding of who she is, enough to really care about when she goes. But this is something that they used to do in Star Trek before, where you would be introduced and at the end the character would die or go away, and you understood enough about them. And that's what Jonathan Frakes and Michelle Paradise managed to do with Arium as a character. If you never saw her before, and this was the first episode of Discovery you watched, you would kind of care about this character when she leaves at the end. That the emotional interaction between her and Burnham, her and Tilly, and that gut punch to where like she's pushed out the airlock, and you see that it was Nan who had to do it, and it's a logical choice on her part. You can't be mad at her, but you're like, damn, one more second and we would have known what Project Daedalus was. But anyway, it's great. It's a great episode.
She had her breathing apparatus like ripped out. Like,
yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, it was like,
I like that.
As a security person to keep everyone safe. Like
Arium asks her earlier, is like asks her about it. She's like, you need that to breathe. And I was like, oh, something's gonna happen there.
Yeah, I knew that too. I have to say that like, I agree 100%. Like, I think that the strength of this episode in and its like execution is that like regardless of if we ever saw Arium or not, the loss I felt, and like it's definitely well done. Like they chose the exact right kind of like development and like story.
They spend a good amount of time with the character in that episode. Like, yeah,
but I do think that, and I do think that like show doesn't just it. I think Arium's been there from the beginning. She's been a topic of controversy, a topic of interest from the beginning. I remember the first time I saw her, I was like, "What is that? Like, what is Arium?"
You remember like the very first time that she's ever on screen? I think it's when Burnham sees the bridge of the Discovery for the first time.
Yeah, that's right.
Saru, and I think they actually like when Saru leaves the bridge, he says, "Commander Arium, you have the bridge," because she's third in command.
Yeah, right. She's a lieutenant commander actually, which is interesting. Same rank as Data.
Commander. I would have liked if they had fleshed her out a little bit more in previous episodes, just so this specific episode would not have had to do all the work to make us care. But Michelle Paradise writes that in there in 53 minutes. Like I cried when Arium died, and I never thought I would.
Yeah, me too.
Care about her.
I got choked up, man. I didn't expect Discovery's not done this to me before, where I'm kind of like my leg is shaking, and I'm kind of like holding back the tears and shit. And then the very last shot, when it's the home video memory where she says, "We're coming home," I was like, "Oh, you mother!" And then I was like, "Oh."
So how do
It
y'all
pulled the heartstrings? It sure did.
how do y'all feel about the writer of this episode, newcomer to the show, is
Yeah,
promoted to co-showrunner next year?
Michelle
Yeah, I think
Paradise.
if this is the debut, I'm really excited because it was pretty powerful, or pretty strong debut. I really liked it, and it was a great pairing with Jonathan Frakes too.
Yeah, and the way that he shot that fight, he can do action really well because he did the
Really well, yeah, he's great.
on the Mirror Universe Shinjo, Burnham versus Connor. He does.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Despite Yourself. Yeah.
But
He directed.
right.
He directed Despite Yourself, New Eden, and this one. And I think that's it for this season.
yeah, but he's gonna do at least one Picard episode.
Yeah.
But the thing I'm most excited about Michelle Paradise, it being in a leadership position, and I'm thinking will possibly be kind of the person in charge of the writers' room because Alex is busy with all these other shows. The thing I'm most excited about is how she took the time in this episode to give us those little character moments where we see the relationships between Tilly and Detmer and Arium and stuff like that. It felt like any other Star Trek show where you understand the characters' relationships to one another, and they feel kind of like this family that works together on a ship or on a station or whatever. But you have those Star Trek. We're just like a big old family working together.
It kind of feels more TOS now because in the last 3 episodes there have been fisticuffs. Burnham and Giorgio, Culber and Tyler, and now Arium and Burnham and Nan. That was a great fight scene when she kicks Burnham across the room and simultaneously jumps up. That was really well done. Some of those wire stunts don't look really good, but this one was perfect.
It does look good.
Yeah, and it made me think she's so much more badass than a Borg. Like this is the actual badass, scary cyborg.
And Michael Burnham's like it looks like her liver's getting smashed. She's like, oh, it's like, oh my god,
that's so well. Whenever Burnham is like hurt or in like severe stress,
she screams.
Yeah, like when that piece of debris stabbed her leg in the episode Brother on the asteroid with the Hiawatha, or in the
episode 2.
That scream was like chilling. I also think that like Sonequa Martin Green's great actress. I didn't know her before, but I really like her, and I might go and watch her other shows. But like another example of that is that like when Spock leaves the room after like little fight over the chess, that like how she like waited until he left, and then she like kind of lets her pain show. I thought that was great. And then I love that Saru, like you pointed out earlier, just kind of senses that. What did you guys think about the thermal heat thing, like that whole thing? Like I think
Saru solved the problem.
Yeah, but I think that like that has to do with like something was throwing. Vision might not be thermal, but because he has these like heightened like this better, like maybe he saw something different in the in the Admiral and in footage, but didn't know quite what it was, and then he finally came to the conclusion when they realized
it's kind of a cheap plot device to have Saru solve a problem. And here's why: because it's easy to okay, the cameras can not only cameras can record your image, but they can record like your thermal image as well, which fluctuates if you record it that way. And all Saru did was say, "Oh, you forgot to check the thermal imaging facsimile," and whoever I guess manufactured the image, the AI didn't bother to account for the thermal changes in the human body in certain stressful situations, and that's why Saru. But it was a great moment. Saru, like it's kind of one of those classic Star Trek things where they're solving a problem and you're like going right along with it, and it's fun to figure out like the pieces of the puzzle.
Whenever they use Saru's eyes to solve a mystery, it kind of sucks. Like in the episode Brother, they take a picture picture of the Hiawatha with cameras, and then he's able to like get a closer. It was like, no, like if you have a picture of that high resolution, then you can zoom in, and it doesn't matter if someone has better eyesight; they're not going to be able to make the resolution of the picture better.
It's not about Saru seeing the thermal imaging with his eyes through the screen like they did in the Brother episode. That was stupid because they could have just digitally zoomed in, but in this case, he's analyzing the thermal image that was sent from Psyche. Like he's not seeing it on the screen and saying,
to me it makes sense.
Yeah, go ahead.
To me, it makes sense because as a predator, as a prey species, like he would have these like heightened senses, and so maybe he doesn't have like technical abilities, but just something triggered him. Like he was like, I should investigate this because something's just like it started out like that. You know what I mean? It wasn't necessarily that like that he saw that, you know, right away, but like, or that his eyes helped. Just overall, his whole like nature helped him to realize something's
his eyes had anything to do with this thing.
Yeah,
I think he just had a hunch and he went with it, and he was an essential part of the solving that mystery. We all knew the tapes were fake anyway, so the tapes, you know.
Well, the TOS technology, they could be stored on tapes.
We're getting close to wrapping up. So what I'd love to do now is, I guess, do our closing thoughts and give ratings. And Avi Totes, I'm gonna give this a 10 again. I know I'm becoming like I'm becoming super predictable. But I just really, as my closing thought, like just you know, overall, like this, like I just get so excited whenever Jonathan Frakes does an episode because I know it's just gonna have something like really cool about it, and everything you guys said, like I agree with in terms of his directing, but specifically I just like really loved that like there was a great pacing.
No, I lost you.
Yeah, there is a great pacing.
He's there, but I think he's frozen.
Oh, hello, great pacing. Am I back?
No, yeah. We heard great pacing was the last thing we heard.
Oh, great pacing and just like character moment, like how he like pauses on each character at Ariam's death. Like those are just kind of like the type of things that like really enhance you know, the experience when you're watching an episode. And then the writing was phenomenal. I love the mystery. I still don't know where it's going, and that's exciting to me because when a show is not, you know, when I can't figure out a show, that's when it's like the best, right? And so I'm there with Discovery. Like I'm really having a lovely time just speculating and trying to figure things out and talking about it. So 10 from Starfleet Boy. Go on, whoever's next.
I give it an 8. That's my highest score for Discovery yet. This is my favorite episode of the entire series. I've watched this episode 3 times and I've not gotten sick of it yet. I don't want to watch it too much and like make myself sick of it, but I mean, it's well written, well directed. Every character is utilized beautifully. There are character interactions between Burnham and Spock that are great, between Stamets and Spock and Burnham, between Cornwell and Pike. There's no Culber or there's no Tyler. That's fine. But another great part is the interaction between Ariam and Tilly, and that moment where Tilly talks to her on the Section 31 ship and kind of breaks her spell, and she yells out, "Tilly, I can hear you!" Like, oh, that's so emotional. Yeah, it was so well done. Perfectly timed, perfectly shot. And and you got to go back and listen to this episode with headphones on because the score for this episode is fantastic. So yeah, best so far. It can do better. That's why I'm not giving it a 9 or a 10. I'm very strict with scores. Like I'm very, very picky. And Discovery so far has been 6, 7s, and this is the first 8. So I hope it keeps going at this quality. So
I just want to point out, since you mentioned it real quick, if you listen to the credits, it's so heartbreaking because it's just the ocean. They have like the sound of the ocean playing during the credits, and so 100% agreed. Yeah.
So I'm gonna be the lowest with I'm gonna give it a 7.547.
47?
Yeah. Number in there. The reason I don't give it like an 8 or a 9 is because there were some little contrivances that bugged me, kind of things with like the admiral coming over with a lie detector, things like the mines, just like the way that a lot of that stuff worked, where the death of Ariel, I'm not really explaining like why they can't like just beam her off or something like that. There's a bunch of great character stuff in this episode, and I just wish that it would have been like a little bit more stricter with some of the the narrative side of the writing. And there's kind of some in the beginning of the episode, I was kind of rolling my eyes a little bit with the just the way that Cornwell shows up with like this big info dump of, okay, well now we gotta go over here. This admiral's the bad guy. Just all this exposition and everything. And I was like, oh no, I think I'm not gonna like this episode. Of course, I ended up loving it by the end, but there's just like there's still a little bit of that Discovery inconsistency, and I love that the show is really finding its legs. And I think that this Discovery is going to be something fantastic if it stays on the pace that it's on now. We're gonna remember Discovery fondly years from now when we look back at the history of Star Trek. However, there's certain things about the show that I dislike, and those factors are remaining. They might be just a mainstay of the show. Its obsession with what I keep calling the high pace, expedience, high energy, just go from plot point to plot point to plot point, and it doesn't always feel organic, but it's always rushing to get from A to B to C to D. Some of that stuff was in this episode that bugged me a little bit. Not too much, didn't ruin it. I'm still giving it a 7.5. So overall,
I actually.
Go ahead.
I actually have to say that because of your closing arguments, I do have to give the show a 9.5, because one scene that would great at, like, because it would have been so plausible, is if Pike said transport Commander Arium and they were like, we can't, the transporters are down. Like that would have just been like the kind of like extra.
I think the only way I think the only way she could have been stopped is to be killed. Because the cybernetic components can't survive without her, apparently. So,
well,
that's why how they establish it at the end when she physically dies, and then like the digital memories die as well. So I don't know.
Yeah,
but it was pretty good overall. I mean, the last 3 episodes, they've been on the right track.
Yeah, so you're saying the show has gotten better since Alex Kurtzman has just completely taken over and fired the other showrunners.
It seems to be, yes.
Well,
and
I don't delve
Heather Paradise as well. Not fucking Michelle Paradise. Yeah. Sorry, I keep calling her Heather.
Michelle. I don't delve too deeply into like the behind the scenes stuff because it's all like it feels all tabloidy to me. But I do have to say there is definitely a markable change, and it does seem to coincide with Alex Kurtzman. So yes, I agree.
5 times a charm for showrunners. So
I thought that Kurtzman would have been the guy, because if we look at his track record, he's been involved with some things that aren't like the Michael Bay Transformer movies are like my least favorite thing ever. The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I always
try to remember. I always try to remember that like there are cases. I think that there are cases where like the director is the central figure. Like when you get a Steven Spielberg or a George Lucas movie, or worse, it's like that person. But I don't think Alex Kurtzman's the kind of director. He doesn't strike me as the kind of director that is that person. I think he is so much more collaborative. So I think the failure of those other projects doesn't just rest on his shoulders alone. For whatever it's worth, maybe he's taking more an interest in this. Maybe he truly genuinely is a fan of Star Trek, and it's like you can't just it would have been bold, but you can't just overnight change Star Trek Discovery to like the best, like just like I like better, where they're like, let's see if we can make season 1 better by making an awesome season 2 and just enhance, and then work towards making it the best Star Trek series where it didn't start out that way. All right, so Father's got 3 minutes left, so I think we're gonna I think that we'll stop the discussion there because we could just go on and talk and talk and talk. I'm sure you're cool with that, unless you have more you want to unpack.
What was our average? 9.5, 7.5, and an 8. What does that average out to?
I would say that it's fair to give it an 8. No, just like right, don't you think? Because the 9.5 brings the 7, and like. Do you want to do the actual average, like
8.3?
8.3.
Oh wow! Right on.
It's the highest score yet, isn't it?
That's the highest score yet. Super cool. Yeah, I think it is. My 10s. Hey guys, I brought it down. A really good point you made. Oh, I really enjoyed this discussion. I'm really excited about the next episode. It looks like it's going to be a really big one. And I look forward to talking to you guys. I'm gonna go watch all your stuff now. And audience, please go check out Text Trek and Boat Trek.
Check out Text Trek. We have new podcast episodes on YouTube every Sunday, and also available audio only. Find that at text-trek.com. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitter at TXTrek.
Woohoo! And you too. And PJ is at PJ's channel 1 on Twitter.
Yes, that's correct.
You can see, I'm getting better. All right, live long and prosper, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Peace.